So playing sport was always something that I enjoyed, and my brother and I would kick the football and we'd go out until dark playing with kids in the street. So I always thought I'd be a footballer, and I was, because I could run fast.
Yes.
And so at about age 15, I was diagnosed with a heart murmur when I was applying for a job, and my mum said, "You can't play football anymore because you've got a problem." That didn't go down well with me, I can say. But the specialist then said, after I'd been to him, he said, "Listen, in 50 years you might have to do something about your heart." He said, "But there's no reason why you can't play football." So in the third year, at 20 years of age, I was in the South Australian team. And this was at a time when I was beginning my studies in accountancy as well.
Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining us today. Today we have a very special guest, well, special to me. This young man with us today is Don Russell, and Don is my father-in-law, and I feel very privileged to be able to say that. I've known him since I was about 23.
Yeah,
Yeah.
about that. And it wasn't that long after your dear husband had died.
Yes, and actually an interesting, not really a fun fact, but an interesting fact is that my husband passed away on your birthday.
Indeed. And I was down at Port Elliot, one of our favourite hideouts at that time. So
Yes.
we've got a lot in common.
Yes, we do. We were sort of linked in a funny sort of way, and very dear man to me. But the reason that I'm here today with Don is because he's had an amazing life, and honestly, I think there are too many people that we don't talk to that are here with us that have got so much to impart. And so that's why you're here today, and I'm really grateful that you're here.
It's okay.
Good.
I'm not used to being interviewed like this, so I hope that I can pass on some of my quirks and achievements, if you like.
Yeah.
But just a run-of-the-mill life that I was able to meet and greet and have conversations with people, and got to know a lot of people in my time.
Yeah.
And I still talk too much.
That's what I like. Don knows so many people, and everywhere you go with you, it's always like, "Oh, it's so-and-so," and off you go and you're chatting away. You've had a very rich life, and I think I classify you in a category of people that you've lived a really solid life, and that's what I admire about you. You know, you got married as a young man, had a family, stayed with the same woman your whole life, you know, built your house, you've got grandchildren and great-grandchildren. Such a richness to your life. All of those things I admire so much. And today I wanted to ask you a few questions for those people watching, because this is all about living a life that is full and rich and abundant. And I talk a lot about goals with people. And so I wanted to ask you, as a young fellow, because I know you had not a career, but a big part in state football, is that correct?
Yep.
And I wanted to ask you about your goals that you had as a youngster.
I can recall as a really young bloke, say between 8 or 9 years old, people would say, as it was and still is, "Well, what are you going to do when you grow up?" That was a question that was often passed my way. And so I want to be an accountant. And half the time people didn't know what an accountant was anyway. And I'm an 8-year-old saying, "Oh, I want to be an accountant." Oh, wow. So that's exactly what I did become. I was good at school. My maths were good. My English was good. I didn't study English. I didn't like English, but I liked to be able to speak properly and reasonably, and never to try and get over anxious when you were talking, but always be prepared so that you knew what you wanted to say. I was a lay preacher in my early years before I had children, in the early days when we were married, and my parents and the family they belonged to were long-time Christians, and that rubbed off on my family. I'm not a churchgoer now, but it has had a set of rules that have been part of the way that I've lived. There are lots of good rules that we learned as kids that see you for the rest of your life.
Yes, yes. So let's talk about your football, I'll call it a career, because how long did you...
I started playing football as a kid. I had two uncles who played league football in South Australia as well. My dad was an umpire and an umpire's coach. He coached the Baptist church side back in the 30s. So playing sport was always something that I enjoyed, and my brother and I would kick the football and we'd go out until dark playing with kids in the street. So I always thought I'd be a footballer, and I was, because I could run fast.
Yes.
And so at about age 15, I was diagnosed with a heart murmur when I was applying for a job, and my mum said, you can't play football anymore because you've got a problem. That didn't go down well with me, I can say. But the specialist then said, after I'd been to him, he said, listen, in 50 years you might have to do something about your heart. He said, but there's no reason why you can't play football. So I did. And in 1958, after having played in the Colts team, I was selected in the West Torrens A-grade side straight from a junior senior Colt player. And I played just over 100 games, and in 1960 I was represented to play in the South Australian team which played Victoria at the Adelaide Oval, and we won by 11 goals. That was the biggest win that that South Australia has ever had over Victoria. So that, I was pretty pleased about that. And it was an interesting time. I came into the West Torrens team when there was a problem with the getting older players out of the team and getting younger players on, and there was some discrepancies between the management as to how they should go about that. And I was called in while that was happening. So I played as I should. So in the third year, at 20 years of age, I was in the South Australian team, and fortunately they thought I played all right. So I was happy about that. I was happy about that.
Absolutely.
And this was at a time when I was beginning my studies in accountancy as well, so it was a pretty
busy.
I'd go to practice, hop on the bus to go into town to lectures after football practice, having a little sleep on the bus as I went along, and finally got out and went and did my studies. In 1961, I was granted entry to the Accountant Society and did that job for the rest of my working life.
Wow, yeah. Well, I know you helped me. I mean, I started in business nearly 30 years ago, and I remember having you come around and my first spreadsheet of a budget, which was bigger than Ben-Hur, and I still, use it today. So we had some fun. What other achievements in your life that you recognise being achievements because they're things that perhaps you had an idea that you'd like to do, but you didn't really know how that might come about?
There's a time in your life when some of the things that you weren't sure about needed to be addressed. In 1965, first child, and I've got 3 lovely kids and a number of other offspring. We'll talk about those later perhaps. But Marilyn and I had our first baby in 1965, and he was born 4 months early, so he was like a scun rabbit when he arrived. And we were definitely early learners about being a mum and dad. So we did probably what our parents did. We were fairly strict. Our children were like all children. Sometimes they played up, sometimes they got sat down, but we always treated them fairly. And in years later on, one word or a paragraph that one of my daughters said to me, "Dad," after I'd said I didn't think she should be doing something, she said, "Dad, why is it always that we do what you ask us to do?" And I thought that was a tick for a win in some cases, that something that she wanted to do and I didn't think was the right thing to do, she agreed and abstained from it. So Marilyn and I both were keen to bring up children that valued their family, and they have been great family people. They're people you can rely on, and if they're going to do a job, they do it well. I said to my daughter, when she said she wanted to be married to her husband, when you get married, you and your husband are in charge of your lives. If you want help, you can come to us at any time, but we're definitely not going to step into your way of living. That's up to you now. You know what you want to do, and that's what you can do. If you need some help or some advice, then come to us. We'll be only too happy to help.
That's good.
So people who have a good character can come to that place by looking and seeing people who they admire. I've never really thought of that until in recent years, when I think I did more about wanting people to like me than I perhaps should have.
So let's talk about this a little bit, because this is a very interesting topic for our viewers, because there is a lot of that out there where people aren't being who they might feel like they really are because they're wanting to be accepted. So, we trade off being authentic for being liked and to belong with a crowd, and we end up not belonging to ourselves in the end. Can you single out an area where that might have been the most hard for you?
The difficulty I found was that I had a couple of bad injuries when I was playing football, and it meant that I had to stop playing. But it was at a time when I was playing well. So I stopped playing top-line football at age 24, so not very old for normal playing.
Yeah.
And I was concerned that I hadn't been giving enough time to my family when you're so busy playing a top-line sport. So I had to change my attitude in a lot of things. Marilyn was a brilliant mother who could do just about anything, so she was looking after the children and I was running around playing footy. It wasn't very fair. So I'd been thinking about me and not so much about the family. So that's not the best way to do things. If you want your children to be good citizens, then you've got to be a good citizen yourself. You've got to be the person that they would like to be like.
Yes.
So that meant I had to make some changes. I was in charge of a finance department of a big company with I don't know how many, about 15 people. And it was a responsible job. I was the chief accountant in Adelaide for the company that I was working for, and that meant that I had to keep a number of people in sync. They were doing work that needed to be done on time, and so we had to make sure that everyone knew what they were doing. We had a new company that came in and took over, and they changed the rules, so we had to change to that. So I made sure that I drew that team together so they all knew exactly what they had to do. It's no good trying to get a result if you don't put some action into what you've got to do.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I became, what I hoped to do was to bring that group together like a family.
Yeah.
So first thing every day I'd go and say hello to all the people. When I walked in there, I would go and talk to the people straight away when work was starting. if they had a problem, they'd probably raise it then. If not, it'd be just the start of the day. So that was the start of what I considered to be an accomplishment to keep a group of people, and up to 12 or 13 can be a little difficult at times. In the back of your mind, you've got to have a conscience, and that's one of the things that has guided me more than most else, that there are some rules that get embedded when you're very young,
Yes.
and they often things that should be done in later life. I think in a lot of occasions now, people do follow the wrong instructions that they've had when they're growing up.
Yes. We've actually just been talking about that, how we do get programmed by what we're taught when we're young, and there are a lot of people that, you know, unfortunately get taught the wrong things and continue to live that way until they realise they can change it. So that makes us, who have been in good families, we're very privileged to have had that beginning.
True.
Can you think of something that, well, I guess I'm curious, was there a time when you felt like there was something standing between you and what you really wanted? You know, I talk a lot with people about things that they want, but they often have reasons why they don't think they can go ahead and do that. Did you ever?
No, I was always of the opinion of the line that I wanted to take, and it was I read Dale Carnegie and all sorts of things to try and get an idea of what good business is and how you should act in that. I wasn't a good salesman. I was good at getting things done and done properly, and having a pride in the work that I did, so that if it was going to be done and I needed to do it, and sometimes that was to my detriment. I took on stuff that I shouldn't, and I think we should be very careful that we give more control to other people, teach them to do things that they may not have tried to do before. So engage with them, talk to them, ask them to come and ask questions rather than go and think about something and not be able to do it.
Yes.
So encouraging other people was always something that I enjoyed.
Yes.
I enjoyed.
Yeah, I think that is a big part of who you are. I've experienced it too. Yeah. What about something that you remember, any area of your life that you remember as a really good, maybe it stands out as something that you really enjoyed, whether it's a really funny time?
I enjoyed seeing some of the unbelievable craft work that my wife did.
Yes.
2 daughters had weddings within a couple of years of each other, and there were dresses and all sorts of things to be done, and Marilyn made all of your wedding dresses. Unbelievably beautiful girls, 3 of them they were, and you couldn't help but be proud of what she did.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And not an accomplishment of mine, but just to be able to say, look, this is something that Marilyn's done, and it was just unbelievable stuff. But she was such a quiet lass, lady, call her a lady at this stage. She won the prize at the annual China Doll Society with a $300 first prize. And I've got the program at home which showed her name as the winner of the prize. But when the time came that they were going to have the presentation dinner, she said, I'm not going to go. I said, oh, you must go because they've got a presentation for you. She said, oh no, I couldn't possibly go there. I would be so nervous. So So she didn't go? She didn't go because she felt that it was something beyond what she could cope with. Yeah, so.
Wow.
So I had a supreme love of her for just those sorts of things. It was never about herself. It was always about what she could do for someone else.
She was a lady of excellence.
And that sort of way in life is something that just can't be repeated in a lot of cases. It was wonderful. I was very, very lucky. I've been a lucky man from day one, I'd say, from day one. Yeah.
I think you've generated a lot of your own luck. Like you said, you've lived a disciplined life. You've made choices.
Yeah.
And I've seen you walk them out in sometimes very not easy circumstances.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, well, I've done some volunteering in my life, and been a secretary of a bowling club, and there have been some difficult times there. There are always conflicting people, and sometimes you've got to sort those out. But those sorts of things you have to do with a good deal of straightforwardness. There's no need shouting and bawling people out. There can always be a way of getting people together. I tried that a couple of times and it worked. It's a matter of your own attitude in those situations, that you keep calm and you listen to both sides of the question and take the middle road so that both people can have some respect.
Yeah. For anyone watching this, you don't need to divulge your age, but if someone's just starting out in life, let's say they're even, in their 20s or 30s, I haven't asked you this in preparation, but would you have 3 things? What would be 3 things, if you have, that you would give as advice, I guess? Yeah.
I've always been a person who said the job is not done well enough unless you're pleased about it. So having had a lot of people under my control, I've always tried to impress that the job must be well done so that you're proud of it.
Good.
And if it takes 5 minutes longer than the bell time, then you stay and do it. Too often people are waiting to rush out instead of keeping a level head and doing the time that's needed. That's one. The second is to be kind to your fellow workers. Offices are difficult places.
Yes.
I think is important. Among all other things, I think it is treating your neighbour as you would want to be treated yourself.
Yes, yes.
So if you want some help, go and talk to someone. Ask them if they can do something for you. And in return, give them some good advice.
Yeah, so hop into the shoes and see it from their perspective.
I give myself some credit in being able to bring together people as a group and rather have people looking at me or me doing this or doing that as us doing this or that.
Yes.
I think that business today has come a long way, and they've taught now to be called a team. Often they're a team member of so-and-so, so-and-so. You ring up someone, I'll talk to a team member.
Yes.
I think that gives everybody more involvement with the group and listen to what they've got to say. People have got some difficulty, then talk to someone about it, ask for some help. Don't try and get through it and botch it.
Yes. Use all the resources you have. Yes. That's good.
Yes. We've all got some pluses. I look at myself now at age 84 and wonder whether I've been worthwhile. The answer to that is yes, I think I was. But you're never 100%. So the few times that you get on the wrong side, you need to be aware of it and make sure it doesn't happen again.
Yeah, make the adjustment.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, I know it's certainly been worthwhile me having you in my life. So I'm one that would say, yes, you have been worthwhile. And I'm sure there's a long line of people that would say, yeah. Okay, so I'd like to hear a little bit more about your younger self, maybe a story from back then. And then I'd like you to tell us, if you could say anything to that younger self now, knowing all that life you've had, what would that be?
I said a little earlier that I was a show-off, and unfortunately that is not a good thing to be. We were regular goers to church, and I was a member of the Boys Brigade, which was a group of boys who were attached to the church who came along and played games, had fun, and generally taught the lessons of life. A friend of mine who lived in the next street, we'd often come home, and after Boys Brigade used to be one of the occasions, and we'd come down the street and grab a handful of gravel and throw it on their roof so that it was being naughty. And then we'd be off down the street as fast as we could go so that no one knew who it was. Those sorts of things, I look back now and I would say to myself, be a proper boy, not a show-off boy. That's the one thing I think throughout my whole life has been something that I've had to control, because I often wanted to be the stage leader instead of being the ordinary person. That's something that we've all got different temperaments, and I was a loud boy more so than I should have.
You felt that it led you astray at times.
Yeah, it did. It did.
You've got a number of grandchildren now, great-grandchildren.
Yeah.
What do you think when you look at them? I mean, you know, they range from a year old, great-grandies.
Coming up soon.
Yes, and right through. What do you think when you look at them? Because you are someone that doesn't give advice, you don't tell people what to do. But what do you see? Do you see a lot of difference in the way they're being raised and the way that they're developing and unfolding?
Yeah. Interestingly, I think they're all going to be much better than me when they grow up, because I've got one granddaughter who's now a veterinary science person. I've got another grandson who's just broken his leg playing volleyball. And he and I used to play cricket together, and he was a good little sporting boy, so I just loved that. And, and I might not have told him too much, but I was always there to give him a clap when he did well. So there are things in all of my children and great-grandchildren and grandchildren that I admire. I won't mention any names, but my children have brought up wonderful kids, and they are very respectful, and I just love being with them, because I think I have a good way with kids. I like being with kids. So, so that's part of a ball of life that some people don't or can't be involved in, and I just love that.
Biggest
just love it.
The biggest blessing.
Oh yeah, it's
so good.
It is good, and you see the advancement of them. You see them from times when things aren't going right, when battles between parents and children are a problem. But in my case, in my family, at the moment, I don't think there's one problem amongst all of them. Everyone's doing better than they expected they would be doing, and I can't be more happy than see that happening. You
Absolutely.
It's just brilliant,
It's a real blessing to have people like you in our lives, you know, and for those of you that have family, you know what I'm talking about, and for those that don't, then there's lots of ways now that we can, you know, like you said, create communities with people, which we really enjoy, and this is one of them, really. So I lost my wife 3 years ago and a bit, and whilst I've been on holidays in the last week or so, I was talking to some friends about my life and about my wife. And it's the first time I've cried since she passed away, because I hadn't realised just how much she meant to me. And I'm going to cry again now if I don't stop. And how long were you married?
59 years.
Yes, that's
59.
a very long time. Yes. Such a rich life, and I'm so grateful that you have shared a little piece of it with us. I know we could have you on every week and talk about so many stories. Is there anything that comes to mind that you want to leave us with?
If you're able to spend time with your family, make it as often as you can, because they will appreciate that and you will appreciate them.
Yes, very well said. I so appreciate you. You are a man that speaks well and always imparts something worth hearing. So, yeah, I feel very privileged to have you on here. Thank you.
I've enjoyed it.
Good. Thank you. Thanks, everyone, for joining us.